Well, let's take a look at Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Moving About in the 3D World. We'll be covering some of that. And what I would suggest, if you start out with stuff on your screen, and you might want to learn this reset tool, because that'll take you all the way back. I don't care to save it to where it was from the very beginning. Yes, I do want to reset. Now I've got a fresh screen here. All right. Let's talk a little bit about viewports. If you hit your D key, it will disable whichever viewport that you decide that you want to disable. And what that is supposed to do, and I don't think it does it on mine because I've got a touch screen computer and I think that the graphics card's different, but try it on yours and make sure that it's working on yours. That if you do something in any one of these other three views while this is disabled, see it says inactive there, which you just saw the square, or the part of the cube being created there, and you shouldn't have. I should have been able to create that cube, and I should be able to move it without, without it updating here until I go back and hit the D key again, in which case then it should update. But I think on my particular display, it's not working the way it's supposed to. The other thing you can do is hit the G key in any given viewport, and that will turn on or toggle on or off the grid, which is a good feature in case that grid is getting in your way of some of the lines that you've created and you want to get a quick view of where everything actually is. View cube orientation. You can right click on it and go here to configure, and you can cut it off here, or you can go here and you can cut it off here. Show view cube, cut it off here. And you've got a whole bunch of other settings here that you can play around with that'll allow you to customize that cube to work any way you want. There's a steering wheel display, which if you click here, you can toggle the steering wheel on. Of course, there's a shortcut to that. What it is it's you're saying it's Shift W. So you can view object wheel, zoom, rewind, which will let you go back to previous views that you had it at, orbit. You may find a value in this. I mean, most of the tools down here will do the same thing. I think this sort of gets, for me, this gets in the way. But depending on how you get used to using your tools, and here's a full navigation wheel, that's how that looks. So they all look a little bit different. Take a look at them, see which ones work for you, and decide whether you want to do it that way or this way. But I think if you get a complex model, that'll get right in your way. Point of view, viewport name. So obviously we had already talked about viewport names, and you've got all of these names that you can, and keep in mind you've also got all of these shortcuts that will take you right there as well. Don't forget the cameras and the lights. If you have cameras and lights in your scene, let me just create one more box real quick and throw a couple of lights in there. Put a couple. I don't want photometric. Here again, I just stick with the standard, I would say, until you start really getting good at it. And you can start working some of those other lights. Target spot. Go over here. Include most of that. Then if I look at my side view, then okay, I'm going like, wow, that's not really what I want. I'd rather lift that light up so that it's projecting down at those objects. And in top view, I mean, what I can do is just orbit this thing all the way around so that, as you can see in my bottom perspective view, it's updating. The light is updating. So there you go with that. Now I can place a camera here. Camera from here to here. And again, the camera is sort of on the ground because they'd like to place things at the 0 coordinate wherever they can. And I'll raise that up. And here I can click on C for the camera view. Now that's the camera view. That's like I'm looking through the camera, and I can adjust that view by going over here, choosing these tools, dollying in and dollying out. Actually, that's the field. That is a different tool. That is dollying the target. That's not actually dollying the camera. Now let's select that camera. And again, this is a good excuse to try to use something like this, because if you choose the camera and I start trying to dolly the camera, you can either use your move tool here, that's for the light, see if I move the camera, I'm moving closer, and go over here, I can orbit, and you can see the camera moving in that left view, or yeah, in the left view. Again, you can pan. Dolly camera and target, you got your choices here. Dolly camera, that's me just dollying camera. Perspective, you can force perspective on these things. Let's see how it's starting to get a little really warped when I do that. Anyway, play around with these tools down here and see what you can accomplish with these and what each one of them does. It's a field of view. I think that's similar to like having a 50mm camera or different lenses on your camera. Now perspective, and let's just go through this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and choose perspective view for this again, and then I'm going to just click on, first of all I want to get my selection tool going. I want to click on the corner here so that we get a 45-degree angle. Looking at it at a 45-degree angle. What you'll notice with these views is that this particular, the length of this from here to here, top to bottom, appears shorter than the length from here to here, and that's called foreshortening. It's because all of these lines are converging at a vanishing point somewhere way out here. All of these seemingly horizontal lines aren't horizontal, they are converging somewhere way out here, wherever your field of vision is. And if you hit U, That's going to be your orthographic view of the same sort of thing. This is where this line here is the same as this line here. All these lines are perfectly parallel. This would be more of like a technical drawing, and the other would be more artistic, where you're forcing perspective to make it actually look like it would in the real world. If you were looking at a real house, there is actual foreshortening going on. Now, obviously, these we have talked about before are ortho views. And I'm just going to zoom in, and it's just going to zoom into the extent of all of what I've got on the screen. And you can, again, cut your grid on and off in either of these views. On and off. And these grids are adaptive, so the more you zoom in, the more detail it's going to be. The more you zoom out, you can see that they look bigger, but between the grid lines, but as you zoom in, it gets closer. So it is adaptive. Just hit Z. And these are aligned, of course, with the grids. The top, the front, and the left view. Then the shape view. Let me draw a. Let's go back to perspective view real quick. That's giving me some forced perspective, as you can see. And you can get rid of a lot of that sometimes by clicking this field of view and going way in and out again, and that'll correct it to where it's not looking quite so forced. Go out and then click your zoom tool, and so we got rid of a lot of that forced perspective. But let me go ahead and grab a cone. And with that cone selected, I'm going to create a bounding box. So when I click off of it, you're going to see a box that actually represents the extents of that whole thing. Now you can configure this viewport to just go with the selection brackets. I'm going to go back to a shaded view. Hold on a second. I don't think that took. Selection apply to all. Okay. See, there you go. Then it's not just the complete cube. Then it's broken here, so it's brackets versus just the cube. And you can have this in both shaded view and see where the extensive you're drawing it. I kind of like this better. And changing views, of course, you can use T for top view. You can go through these: T for top, B for bottom, F for front, L for left, C for camera, and Shift, what is it, Shift F4? Or no, Shift 4 is the spotlight. Shift 4 is the spotlight. So you can see that's changed to this view, viewing it from the actual spotlight. P is perspective. U is the user, which we had talked about is more of your axonometric view. All the lines are parallel. They don't go to a particular viewport point. There's no perspective there. And alternate W will allow you to zoom in on the actual, or concentrate, focus on the specific selected viewport that you're working in. You can modify this. Say if you're working in here and you want to orbit around and do something weird. Get some sort of weird view like that, and then you can go up here to views and then go to save active orthographic view. Then if I move out of it, do something weird, and then I go back to views and then I go back to restore, it takes me right back to where I was. So that's a good little command to know in case you're working in a specific view that you really want to come back to and visit. Redraw is your one key on your keyboard, and there'll be times where you get really busy drawings and they just don't look right. And when they don't look right, try hitting your F1 key, your one key, and that one key should help you redraw. A lot of times I thought it might be there, but it's not. Active view shows lighting. So here we're in shaded, but if we go to realistic and let me go to the spotlight group, and that is Shift 4. This is the spotlight view. Sometimes you have to make sure that your lighting and shadows are set correctly too. If you go to this lighting and shadows, you saw what I just did. Illuminate with scene lights. What it was doing was I could tell that it did not have any sort of dramatic lighting, and I needed to do that. And anyway, that's how that should look with the correct lighting. I don't have a ground plane, so there's not going to be any real shadows thrown on the ground plane. Could do that. Let's see. Plane. Now you can start to see the shadows of the spot where the spotlight is. Oh, it's not going to zoom like I wanted to because I'm in the spotlight. Okay. But you can see that that's casting a shadow, and loading in shadows. Let's see what other, it says shadows are selected. Auto display selected lights. I don't have any lights selected, but if you had them selected, you can do that. So anyway, I mean, I don't have a texture or any color on this plane. It would probably look a lot better if I did. We'll get in that a little bit later on. Just keep in mind that if you go to here, the display properties, what you have here is very similar to what you have if I right click and I go to object properties and then I go to general. You'll see all of these same things are here. One is the display and one is for the object. Now you could even make it by layer if you wanted to. If you wanted to make these selected just on the layers. You can hide and freeze. If I go to the layer control, you got the freeze. You can hide it. Here are all my objects. Turn them on, turn them off. Start to sort of explore some of these things and determine, you know, really how it would best suit you to work. You can cut on and off. You can filter out the lights here, just the same as you can here. Under my display properties, I can turn the lights off. Under ND display. So very similar tools in each, whether you're in the layers, whether you're in the object properties here, or whether you're over here in the display. But the display is going to deal with its display, the object's going to deal with the object, and the layer is going to deal with whatever what layers these objects are on. So organize yourself with that in mind. Again, you may want to review how each of these can be displayed. You can display them as a bounding box. In object properties, displays a box. Got it there too. Backface cull. That means that if you have backface cull enabled, it won't render the back, or the area, you know, whatever you can't see, whatever's away from you. Vertex ticks is what it says it is. Experiment with some of these things. Keep in mind that with your zoom tools, you got them down here. Let me get out of this view. I'm going to go to perspective. And that all of a sudden changes these to the regular zoom tools and not camera related tools. So if you Alt Z, that allows you to put you in the zoom mode, as you can see down low. Control Shift Z zoom extents all. Region zoom is Control W. Which, as you noticed, it actually selected this tool. And pan is Control P. Or you can select it down here. Your choice. I'm going to click back over to shaded so we can see this a little better. I'm going to get rid of this. Move this. You have orbit, which is here. Several ways you can do it. You can do it with your So I'm in track view now. I select orbit. I can do it with my, it's still doing this. If you select in here, it'll rotate mainly with the home grid. If you go out here, the whole viewport it will orbit around the whole viewport. Here, vertically, same here. Horizontally here. Now that I'm in this orbit tool, I can actually select the, I don't know why it keeps kicking me back into walkthrough. Anyway, try messing around with it with your arrow keys as well, because your left should be horizontal. Orbit, your up and down should be up and down, but it's not doing it. It keeps kicking me back into walkthrough. Try it in yours, see if it works better in yours. I think some of these yeah, it likes me to go through the walk view, but that's fine. I mean, I just as soon use these, and it could be I've got something in my preferences set so that it won't use the keys. Let's see if yours do that. Undo the last view, or redo the last view that you were in, and go here, and here, and undo. Undo. Or Shift Z. Shift Z. Let me undo the last so many, and I think you can go back into your properties, your preferences there, and set it on how many undos. But the more undos you have, the more it sits in memory, and the harder it is going to be for you to deal with bigger models. So keep that in mind too. That concludes 5.